Hello my friends, Hank here, and today we've got a very special video for you all. We're going to be taking a look at the basics of airbrushing, specifically what to do when you get your very first airbrush. If you're a scale modeler, a miniature painter, or a hobbyist of any sort hoping to pick up an airbrush for the very first time, this video is for you. Airbrushing is a wonderful way to paint up scale models and miniatures and can really help you achieve that high quality professional finish that you're looking for. In my opinion, developing your airbrushing skills is the secret to unlocking so much fun and potential in this hobby. There's never a bad time to start practicing, so let's give it a go today. Now, for today's demonstration, I've got a brand new airbrush here. This is from Gallery, but the basic setup work that we're going to walk through today will apply to pretty much any standard double action airbrush that you're going to find out there. If you do want to pick up this particular brush or any of the starter brushes that I like to recommend to my viewers, you can take a peek down in the description below for a link to those. And with that said, let's hop over to our top-down view, and I'll take you guys through the setup process so you can be up and airbrushing in just a few minutes here. Alright, here we go. Now, before we even open up our new airbrush, let's first check out our other essential piece of equipment here, our air compressor. As the name suggests, our air compressor is going to provide the air pressure that we need to operate our brush. I've been using this 0.0 compressor for years and years now. It works wonders for me, and it'll last you a really long time. Solid investment here. For our first step, let's plug our air compressor into a power source. And if you go ahead with this starter compressor set, it also comes with a hose here. We're going to need that in just a bit. Okay, time to open up our airbrush. Let's break out the trusty paratrooper knife and free up our new brush. Once the box is open, as you can see, we're greeted by all of our parts, as well as this lovely diagram of all the guts that make up our new piece of equipment here. Very handy stuff for maintenance down the road, as well as just understanding how this thing all works. Let's go ahead and remove our brush from the box. Here is the main body of the airbrush itself. We can pop this protective cover off here. And the first thing we're going to want to do is attach our paint cup. Some brushes have this built in. This particular model has two different volume options, so we'll grab our smaller cup to start with and screw that into place like so on top of our brush. A quick basic parts overview of the double action airbrush here. First up, we have the stem of the airbrush. This is where our compressed air will feed into the brush itself. Back here is the handle of the airbrush. This houses the back part of our needle and allows the adjustment of the flow of paint. This is our paint cup, as mentioned, the reservoir that's going to hold our actual paint. Inside there you can see the well and get a little bit of a glimpse of our needle. And up front here is our nozzle and needle caps, respectively. If we unscrew these, we can reveal the airbrush needle, which is the heart and soul of this whole operation. Let's carefully align our nozzle and slip that back into place. Up top here is our trigger, or our lever, and it can make two separate motions, hence the double action of the double action airbrush name. This trigger is spring-loaded. If you push the trigger straight down, this particular action is going to start the flow of air through the airbrush. And if you push it down and pull it back, that's going to start the flow of paint. If we go ahead and remove the handle of our brush, you can see that when we pull our trigger backwards, the needle of the airbrush moves backwards as well. This simultaneously opens up the nozzle of the airbrush and allows paint from our cup to enter the flow of air through the brush. If we unscrew this chucking nut around our needle, we can remove the needle itself. This brush comes with a 0.35mm needle installed already, but most brushes come with a few different sizes that can be swapped in and out depending on what kind of precision you require for a particular project. For our purposes today, this 0.35mm needle is totally fine for whatever you're working on, so no worries there. We won't get into that right now. Let's pop our needle back in there and reassemble the brush. Now, to further demonstrate, I've removed the needle cap here so you can see the business end of our brush in action. When we pull back our trigger, you can see the needle retracts into the body of the brush and allows paint to flow. If we want to tighten up our airflow and allow less paint to come through, therefore drawing smaller lines and more precise lines of paint, we can twist our control knob clockwise, and you can see here that the needle doesn't retract as far into the brush now. And we can really tighten that back for very fine lines of paint. You can see that the needle barely retracts at all. For bigger lines of paint and for better coverage, we can twist the control knob counterclockwise, and then our needle is going to retract further again. Alright, let's get some paint in here and get this thing working. To start out, let's grab our hose, and one end of this can screw onto our air compressor. Let's get that out of the way now. And now we can attach the other end to our airbrush. As you can see, our standard hose doesn't hook right up to this particular brush because this airbrush has a quick release fitting already installed. If your airbrush doesn't have a quick release, no worries, you can just twist the hose directly onto the airbrush itself. If you do have a quick release though, go ahead and attach that to the stem of your airbrush. Now this is a quick release adapter for your hose. This is the female piece, and you can pick this up for just a few bucks. I'll leave a link down in the description below, but this thing is going to save you so much time in the long run. It's definitely worth grabbing one of these. Now all we've got to do here is twist this onto the end of our hose, and then we can just pop our brush right on there. No screwing needed each and every time. Super quick and easy release mechanism for cleaning your brush in between paint colors and such. Alright, so our airbrush is set, connected to our compressor. I usually keep my compressor down on the floor because it vibrates quite a bit when it's working, but just for reference here, we can switch it on, and you're going to hear it working to compress the air in the reservoir there. You'll also see that the PSI, or the pressure gauge, went up accordingly. Now let's go ahead and grab our airbrush, and we can depress the trigger just a little bit to let some air flow through a few times, and you'll see the gauge drop a little bit and steady out. So we're currently airbrushing at around 32 PSI, which is a bit much. My sweet spot for pre-mixed acrylic paints that I like to use is right around 22 to 25 PSI usually, so let's lower our pressure here a bit. We're just going to pull this lock nut straight up on our compressor. We're going to twist it counterclockwise a little bit, and then we're going to test our flow once again. Alright, let's give that a go. We can lock the pressure adjustment nut again. And let's run some paint through here. Maiden voyage of this brush. We're going to load up some acrylic RLM 75 from Ammo, and my recommendation for those of you who are just getting into airbrushing, definitely go with a pre-thinned paint designed specifically for airbrushing. This is going to save a lot of headache when you're trying to learn this skill, and you don't want to have to worry about thinning ratios while you do that. So take your paint and shake the bejesus out of it. We want to make sure that the pigments and carriers are all nicely blended and we've got a perfect consistency. And then we can add a few drops of our paint right into our cup here. Let's close that up, and we can do one final test of our airflow. Remember, if we only push the trigger straight down and we don't pull back at all, only air is going to come through the brush here. Now also I will say, please be sure to wear a respirator and be in a well-ventilated environment when you're airbrushing. It's good practice. Alright, so our airflow is good. Let's start painting. If I start pulling my trigger back here, very gently, no adjustments, you can see I've got a very faint and light spray of paint. This is a little spotty, so this is telling me that we've got a bit too much pressure coming through the brush. So what I'm going to do is reduce the pressure a little bit more. We're going to get right down to around 20 PSI now. And now you can see that's much nicer. That's a nice big squiggle there. And if we want to tighten that up, we can do so and create some much smaller, finer lines. And that, my friends, is the bare bones gist of it. If you'd like to dive more into specifics on how to paint various subjects, you can subscribe right here to Spruce and Bruce Scale Modeling, and we can learn all about how to paint up figures, aircraft, tanks, you name it. And I'm hoping to follow this video up with a second installment on how to troubleshoot airbrush problems and how to clean your brush, so stay tuned for those as well. And if you'd like to explore any of these products for yourself and start practicing today, you can check out the links below. And until next time, my friends, be well, happy painting, cheers.